Hey, what's up guys, Marc Brunet here and welcome back to my new world building series, Developing the World of Chroma Island. In this 5th episode, we're going to take a look at one of the Green People's elders, namely the Jade champion right here. Let's go right in. Alright, in this episode we are going to explore this area of the island, which is the Green People's area. Well, kind of. The Green People, I'm thinking that they occupy most of the shore of the island and maybe a little bit inland, but not much more than that, right? So they are the protector of the forest, and so they're going to stay around the forest. So, you know, in the big center of the island, which is big mountains and things like that, they're going to kind of stay away from that. But so this guy here is going to be the second character that I developed for the Green People, and his name is going to be the Jade Champion. So the Jade Champion is an elder. He's one of the oldest of the Green People, and if none of what I'm talking about right now makes any sense, it's probably because you haven't seen the previous episodes of my world building series. So I highly recommend that you check that out. You can find the playlist in the top right corner of the screen here. But going back to our Jade Champion here, and the reason why I call him the Jade Champion and not just the Green Champion is because the way that I'm thinking about all of those races, so the you know, the red people, the green people, eventually the yellow people, the purple people, blue people, whatever, you know, all those colors. I don't know exactly how many there are going to be, but probably around, you know, 6 to 10 eventually. But the colors are the races. So each of the races is made out of a number of tribes. So I'm thinking that there might be multiple islands in this world that are similar to this, and then each of those islands are inhabited by different, you know, different tribes of different colors, and the tribes will take on different names. So in this case, you know, he's called the Jade Champion because he's part of the Jade tribe, which is found on Chroma Island. So the Green People are kind of particular because whatever muscle mass, whatever kind of physique they can achieve during their life, they never lose it. And so if they can eat a lot, you know, their entire life, that is going to help them live longer. And if they live longer, they can accumulate more muscle, more strength. And then when they get to a really, really old age, when they become, you know, kind of the elders of the tribes, well, they start to develop special powers as well. And so their hands are going to, not only their hands, but their hands in particular are going to become really, really hard on command. And they are going to grow kind of this armor, this exoskeleton on top of their own skin. And so they don't really need to build themselves any armor, to construct any armor, because they are just wearing it and it's just kind of growing on them as they get older. So he's one of those. He's one of the oldest of the tribe. In a previous episode, I was mentioning that these guys go up to 200 to 300. I'm not exactly sure, but in that range, right? And so he's getting up there, and which is why also he's this buff, and also why he looks a little bit, you know, a little bit different than what we've seen in the past when I worked on the lineup, because this guy's got status now. So he has, you know, he has different clothes. He's been alive for a long time, so he has this notoriety within the tribe, which means that he can pretty much do whatever he wants, except that he's not the only one, right? So there are multiple elders and multiple champions just like him, and so they all kind of keep each other in check. Not that they really need to, because again, they're more like monks, and the Green People are generally pretty nice people. And so a little bit about his personal background. I haven't really fleshed out a lot because already, you know, I can take a lot of the ideas already from the concepts that I've done previously, but in his particular case here, you know, when I was thinking about the colors, the different, you know, the kind of garments that he's wearing and things like that, like the jewelry, I was imagining him to be a little bit of flamboyant, right? So he's one of those that really like to display. He's proud of his style. He's proud of his fashion sense. He's one of those that tries to show off a little bit more than the others. So I was talking about the other champions. The other ones might be completely naked, for example, right? So they might not even wear anything other than pants. So it might just be full armor, right? Full exoskeleton. But he's not like that. He likes his comfort. And also, he's got a family. So considering he's pretty old, he's probably got a bunch of kids. But right now, at this moment, he's raising one of them. So there's going to be a small child in the illustration a little bit later, so I'll show you that. And he's also got his, not a wife, but his partner, his companion, that you've seen, well, hooked on his arm. So those two extra characters are going to be part of the final illustration. And the main reason why I wanted to include those two in the illustration is that he would look a little bit too douchey otherwise, you know, a little bit too much like a show off. And so when if he's got his partner, his companion next to him, and his kid in there, it really takes away some of his cool factor. But yeah, other than that, I mean, obviously he's had a good life. He's been able to, you know, he wasn't starving ever because he's pretty built. Man, he's pretty old. Now, there's something I haven't really talked about, but it's how the green people fight. So, if you remember, the red people, they have kind of these magic shapes that they can summon around their arms. The green people are similar, kind of. You know, their arms kind of, when you get really old, their arms start to glow. But really, it doesn't. You know, there's no magic to it. It's really just a really hard surface, almost like a crystal, like a rock, like a diamond. And so they use their arms and legs to fight. And so in their case, it's always hand-to-hand combat. It's their arms are stronger than any kind of material that you can find on the island, and so they really have nothing better than that. It's the best weapon that they can possibly find, and it just happens to be part of them. But now, knowing that, it allows for a lot of possible conflicts with other tribes, maybe, right? So imagine the strongest thing that you can find on the island, the strongest material, is part of another person's body. You can think of, like, you know, I don't know, like elephant poachers, you know, things like that. You know, this kind of crap happens, and so it's very likely that something like that might happen on the island as well, where you'll have the different races maybe that know this fact because they've fought green people before, and maybe that's something that they try to get, right? They might have some use for a very strong material like that. So I'm thinking that this might make the green elders kind of a big target for a lot of different people, just like elephant poachers. There might be other tribes, other races that really want that kind of material, right? So they might hunt the green people, the green elders, to try and get their hands on that to make, I don't know, weapons maybe, different swords, daggers, things like that. But anyways, this is going to be it for the background story for this little guy here. But anyways, here I am with this illustration here, pretty much done. So I still have a little bit of polish to add, and of course I have the two other characters that I mentioned. But for now, let's jump in Photoshop in real time because I want to talk about the mixer brush. All right, and before I do that, let's add a quick background, done, and a little bit of highlights here, sunlight's kind of shining through the leaves. That's much better. So now I'm pretty happy with it, and I also have his family here, like I was saying. So not done, obviously, but the final illustration will probably be something like this. So yeah, with the kid in there, you know, automatically you're just not as cool. I'm going to hide those two for now. So the main reason why I wanted to talk about the mixer brush in here is because it's one of those tools that is extremely powerful, but also that nobody uses really. And I think it's just because of a lack of understanding what it is. But hopefully I'll try to explain what it does here so that you can get a better idea if this is something that might work for you or not. Now, I don't really use that a whole lot for character art, which is what I do most of the time, and so I don't use it most of the time. But when it comes to environment, it's incredibly powerful because it allows you to get a lot of repetition really easily. And the kind of repetition I'm talking about, well, we can demonstrate that here. So I'm going to switch to mixer brush, and the mixer brush, to get that, is just, you know, you hover here and it's going to be this one here. So for me, it just Shift B, it switches to the mixer brush, and you can tell that you have the mixer brush because you're going to get these little icons here at the top. The wetness, the load, the mix, all of these things are just different brush presets, right? So the same as what you would find, or similar to what you would find in here. So different settings to customize your brushes. And what this does, those settings are on top of what you already have for your custom brushes. And so the mixer brush, really, it uses your custom brushes that you already have. And of course you can make brushes specifically for that, but really it just takes any brush that you have here and it will apply those settings on top of it. So you probably know, and if you don't, the way that Photoshop works when it comes to drawing these things here, right? You can clearly see it when I use this brush here, but it's just a bunch of stamps, right? So when you when you do a stroke, a brush stroke in Photoshop, all it does is that it takes one stamp like this, which is just a circular shape in this case, and it just, repeats it for the duration or for the length of your stroke. Now you can change that, and that's going to be the spacing here. So if you want that to not be too visible, you can reduce the spacing. But yeah, as you can see here, it starts to lag a little bit because there's very little space in between the different stamps. So for the sake of performance, I tend to like it at 15 in that area. When that's the case, you see the stamp a little bit more, but it's faster, so it's kind of a trade-off. That is how it works, right? So that's how a brush stroke works. Now, the way that the mixer brush is going to impact all of that is that the stamp will be different. So you'll add different things to the regular stamp. So right now, my stamp is supposed to be just a circle like that, right? But what I can do is I can load paint into my brush. And so not only am I going to paint with the color that I choose here, but it also mixes the color that's already there, that's already on the canvas with it. So it's very similar to real paint. So we can try that right here. So I've loaded, kind of like a random color onto it. And I'm gonna just kind of do a brush stroke like that. And you can see it here on the edges. It's grabbing some of that paint, some of that green here. And now, of course, I'm going to try with a different brush. The brushes with some sort of scattering usually work pretty well with this kind of stuff. So let's try this one maybe. Let's see what that does. So here we can kind of see how the color kind of scatters, right? So it grabs a little bit of the green here, but also use some of the white. And so that's really what it does. It mixes with the paint that's underneath. And you can change all of those settings with, with these little sliders here. So the wetness, the load, the mix, how that mixes with the other color underneath. You can experiment with all of that. But really what I wanted to demonstrate here is the basic function of the mixer brush, because that's what makes it a really powerful tool. So instead of loading up just regular color like we have here, right? I have just the orange, and you can load different color obviously, and that's going to add different color as you're painting. But the main reason why someone would use the mixer brush is that if you alt click to color pick, as you can see here, it's not a color picker, it's a little target. And take a look at the square here. So right now all I did is load up my brush with pink paint, right? So I'm painting with pink paint, and it's pretty simple. But if I alt click somewhere, look at the thumbnail here and what happens. Now suddenly it takes a snapshot of whatever I have in the surrounding area here. And so now instead of painting with a pure, with a flat pink color, now I'm painting with this entire kind of, pattern here. So let me try to grab some of these smaller details here. So as I'm painting, we're getting those same patterns here. So it's stamping this entire area instead of stamping in just one color. And not only that, but it's mixing the paint underneath along with it. A really good way to represent that is with a sphere, for example. So I'm going to do that. All right, so I have my sphere here, and what I'm going to do now is just, make sure that I grab this whole thing here. So I'm just gonna make sure that my brush is big enough to grab everything, maybe a little bit bigger. I'm taking a look at the thumbnail here, making sure that I see the entire sphere. And now, if I do a brush stroke using that as the stamp, or not a brush stroke, but if I just do like tap, 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 as you can see, that is my stamp now. Instead of being just a regular stamp with like a flat stamp, now it has all the lighting information that I had here in my sphere. So if I do a brush stroke, it almost looks like a 3D, kind of like a 3D snake. So this is the most obvious way to demonstrate what this little thing here. So when you load up a particular area of your drawing instead of loading a flat color, the stuff that you can do with it's pretty crazy. All right, next one, if we want to take a look at maybe an example that's a little bit more practical rather than just a sphere, we can do this here. So I'm going to do just like a bush. So some dark bits in the back, some lighter blade of grass in the front. All right, now let's bring back the mixer brush. And let's try to capture this entire thing here. Looking at the thumbnail in here. All right, and now when you paint, you're painting this entire thing. And not only that, so with a regular brush, it's kind of boring. But now if I use maybe my grass brush, well, let's try to see what we can get. So now we get like this really weird grass with a bunch of different colors, which looks a lot more natural than if it was just flat colors. And you can get some really cool bushes like that really quickly. Again, I created like a bush based out of this grass kind of stamp that I had. And now if I actually stamp this whole thing here, this entire bush, now instead of having just a blade of grass, now I have a brush stroke that gives me an entire bush. Right, so obviously it doesn't look that great because I probably need to play around with this a little bit more to create you know, kind of like a source area that's a little bit nicer. But to create like forests really quickly, I just stamp like one tree and maybe like a bunch of trees. And then you can have a brush that scatters the tree and maybe flips them in different angles. And what's great about that is that you retain kind of all the lighting information that you had here. So, right, so I have kind of like the little bit of highlight here on top of my bush, which, well, it works with my current light setup. And so if I want to keep that, all I have to do is use the mixer brush, make sure that I stamp this whole thing. And then whenever I paint, I'm going to get that same kind of, that same stamp. Here are some of the areas that I use it, where I used it on my character. So for the pants, you know, I use the mixer brush quite a bit. For some of the body here, to get really the mixer brush, what I liked when it comes to characters, it's not so much, you know, loading the stamp with a bunch of with cool images. That works really well for environments. It's not as useful for characters, but what I really like about the mixer brush is that it actually blends the colors, almost like it's real paint. And so you can look at this area here of the fabric. What I did there is instead of loading this particular area, I loaded just a regular color, and it just blends really nicely. So if we look at the knee pad here, so well, maybe I wanted this area to be a little bit more blended. And unlike the smudge tool, this really blends the colors nicely. Much more nicely than the smudge tool. And it's great because you can tweak the wetness, the load, the mix, and all these different settings to get exactly what you want. So there you go. That is the mixer brush. It's just a quick overview of the mixer brush and kind of how you can use it. Again, it's really two extra things that you add on top of any regular brush. So it's going to be the fact that it's actually mixing the paint with whatever's underneath. So the mixing aspect of the mixer brush, obviously pretty important, but also the stamp that you can use when it comes to the mixer brush, that makes a big difference. So you can either load up a regular color, or you can load up an actual area of your drawing and use that instead as the stamp. And this for environment is incredibly useful. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend that you start to play around with this because it's an amazing tool that again is just kind of forgotten, kind of ignored by most Photoshop users, which makes no sense because it's actually a really simple tool to use. And so there we have it. That is going to be it for this episode. If you want to be able to do everything that I've done here, right? So the character, the anatomy, posing, although there's not much of a pose, but colors, you know, textures, all of those things, the shading, all the various skills that were needed to actually be able to create this illustration are skills that I teach in my full art school program that you can find at the top right corner here of the screen. Check it out, especially if you've been thinking about going to university or something like that, or like a more traditional art school. I think you'd find it quite a compelling alternative. You know, go ahead and check it out, or share it with a friend that you think might benefit from it. And the same goes for this video, so hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and make sure that you click the notification bell to be notified as soon as the next episode comes out. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I will see you in the next episode. I'm out!